Welcome to UberSchool's comprehensive guide on change management processes and their impact on security. I'm Pete, and joining me today is my esteemed colleague, Dana. We're here to ensure you not only understand this crucial topic, but ace your upcoming exam as well.
That's right, Petey boy, and let me tell you, change management is no joke. It's as serious as a heart attack, but don't worry, we'll break it down for you in a way that'll stick in your noggin.
Absolutely, D-Man. Let's start with the basics. Change management in IT is all about controlling and implementing changes to systems and processes while minimizing disruption and risk. It's a delicate balance between progress and security.
You hit the nail on the head there, Pete. Now let's dive into the key components of change management that directly impact security operations. First up, we've got the approval process.
Right, you are, Dana. The approval process is like the bouncer at an exclusive club. It ensures that only authorized changes get through, preventing any potential troublemakers from sneaking in and causing havoc in our systems.
I love that analogy, Petey. Next, we've got ownership. It's crucial to have someone responsible for each change. Without clear ownership, changes can fall through the cracks faster than a grist pig at a county fair.
Classic, Dana. But you're spot on. Ownership ensures accountability throughout the change process. Now let's talk about stakeholder involvement. It's like assembling the Avengers of your organization. You want all the key players at the table.
Absolutely, Pete. By involving all relevant stakeholders, you ensure that security considerations are addressed from multiple angles. It's like having a 360-degree view of the potential impacts.
Speaking of impacts, that brings us to our next point, impact analysis. This is where we put on our detective hats and investigate how a proposed change might affect our systems, processes, and overall security posture.
Right, you are, Sherlock. Impact analysis helps us identify and mitigate risks before they become real problems. It's like having a crystal ball, but instead of seeing the future, we're seeing potential security holes.
Excellent point, Dana. Now let's talk about test results. These are our proof that changes have been thoroughly vetted and don't introduce new vulnerabilities. It's like a dress rehearsal before the big show.
I couldn't have said it better myself, Pete. And speaking of rehearsals, that brings us to our next point, the backup plan. This is our safety net, our plan B, if things go south.
Exactly, D-Man. A backup plan is a predetermined strategy for reverting changes if they cause unexpected issues. It's like having an escape route mapped out before you enter a building.
Now let's talk about maintenance windows. These are specific times set aside for implementing changes, minimizing operational impact, and ensuring changes are made in a controlled environment.
Right on, Dana. It's like scheduling surgery. You don't want to do it when the patient is running a marathon. You pick a time when they can rest and recover.
That's a good one, Petey. Lastly, we have standard operating procedures, or SOPs. These are our playbooks, ensuring all changes follow established, secure practices.
Absolutely, Dana. SOPs reduce the risk of human error and oversight. Now let's pause for a moment and test our knowledge with a question. Ready?
Fire away, Pete.
All right, here's the question. Which of the following is not typically a component of change management processes? A, approval process. B, stakeholder involvement. C, continuous monitoring. Or D, backout plan.
That's a great question, Pete. I'll give our listeners a moment to think about it. Remember, we've discussed most of these components, but one stands out as not being typically part of the change management process itself.
Time's up, Dana. The correct answer is C, continuous monitoring. While continuous monitoring is crucial for overall security, it's not typically considered a component of the change management process itself.
Spot on, Petey. Continuous monitoring is more of an ongoing security practice rather than a specific step in change management. It's important, but it's not part of the change process per se.
Exactly, D-Man. Now let's move on to the technical implications of change management on security. First up, we have allow lists and deny lists.
The bouncers of the digital world. Allow lists and deny lists are fundamental access control mechanisms. Any changes to these lists can significantly impact security.
That's right, Dina. Mismanagement of these lists could lead to unauthorized access or service disruptions. It's like accidentally letting the wrong person into the VIP section or keeping out the guest of honor.
I can just imagine that scene, Pete. Now, let's talk about restricted activities. Changes to these restrictions must be carefully managed to maintain proper access controls and prevent privilege escalation.
Absolutely, D-Man. It's like changing the locks on a high-security vault. You need to be absolutely sure you're giving the right people the right level of access.
Speaking of access, Pete, let me tell you a story about our old pal Marcus Cooper. This guy once had such high-level access to a system that he accidentally locked himself out while trying to improve security. It took him 3 days and nights, like Iron Man in the cave, as he put it, to regain access without compromising security. Talk about dedication.
Oh, classic Marcus, always getting into those sticky situations. But let's get back on track. Next up, we need to talk about downtime. While often necessary, it creates potential windows of vulnerability.
You're right, Petey. It's crucial to minimize downtime and ensure all security measures are promptly reinstated afterward. It's like leaving your house for maintenance. You want to make sure all the doors and windows are locked tight when you're done.
Great analogy, Dana. Now let's discuss service and application restarts. These can disrupt ongoing security processes or temporarily disable security controls.
Absolutely, Pete. It's vital to have procedures in place to ensure all security measures are properly reactivated post-restart. It's like rebooting your home security system. You need to make sure it comes back online correctly.
Spot on, D-Man. Now let's tackle a tricky subject, legacy applications. These often have specific security considerations that must be carefully managed during changes to avoid introducing vulnerabilities or breaking existing security measures.
Legacy applications, they're like that old car in your garage. It still runs, but you need to be extra careful when you're tinkering with it.
That's a great way to put it, Dana. Now let's talk about dependencies between systems and applications. These can have cascading security implications.
Right, you are, Petey. Changes must consider these interconnections to prevent unintended security impacts on related systems. It's like a giant game of Jenga. Move one piece, and you could affect the whole structure.
Excellent analogy, Dana. Now let's pause for another question. Are you ready?
Ready as I'll ever be, Pete. Hit me.
All right, here's the question. Which of the following is not a typical technical implication of change management on security? A. Allow list and deny list modifications. B. Service and application restarts. C. Firewall rule changes. Or D. Social engineering training.
That's a tricky one, Pete. Let's give our listeners a moment to think about it. Remember, we're focusing on the technical implications of change management here.
Time's up, Dana. The correct answer is D. Social engineering training. While important for overall security, social engineering training is not typically a technical implication of change management.
You're absolutely right, Petey. Social engineering training is more of a general security practice rather than a specific technical implication of change management.
Exactly, D-Man. Now let's move on to the importance of documentation in change management. First up, we have updating diagrams.
The unsung heroes of IT security. Keeping network and system diagrams up to date is often overlooked, but it's essential. These diagrams provide an accurate view of the security landscape, aiding in vulnerability identification and security planning.
Couldn't agree more, Dana. It's like having an up-to-date map of your territory. You can't defend what you don't know exists.
Exactly, Pete. Next, we have the regular updating of policies and procedures. This should be an integral part of the change management process to maintain alignment between security practices and organizational changes.
Right, you are, D-Man. It's like updating the rulebook as the game evolves. If your policies don't keep pace with your changes, you're playing by outdated rules.
That's a great way to put it, Petey. Now let's talk about version control. This is crucial for maintaining security by tracking changes to systems, applications, and documentation.
Absolutely, Dana. Version control is like having a time machine for your systems and documentation. It allows you to see what changed, when it changed, and who changed it.
I love that analogy, Pete. Version control enables easy rollback to secure states if a change introduces a vulnerability. It's like having a save point in a video game. If things go wrong, you can always go back to the last known good configuration.
Exactly, B-Man. It also helps in identifying when and where potential vulnerabilities were introduced. This information is invaluable for root cause analysis and preventing similar issues in the future.
You're on a roll, Petey. Version control also provides an audit trail of changes, which is essential for compliance and security investigations. It's like having a detailed logbook of everything that's happened in your systems.
Great point, Dana. Now, implementing version control for security-related assets involves using dedicated version control systems, maintaining clear change logs, and ensuring proper access controls to version repositories.
Absolutely, Pete. And it's not just about the code. Configuration files, security policies, and even those network diagrams we talked about earlier should all be version controlled.
You're absolutely right, D-Man. Now let's pause for another question. Are you ready?
Ready and raring to go, Petey.
All right, here's the question. Which of the following is not a primary benefit of version control and change management? A. Enabling easy rollback to secure states. B. Providing an audit trail of changes. C. Automating security patch deployment. Or D. Identifying when vulnerabilities were introduced.
Ooh, that's a good one, Pete. Let's give our listeners a moment to think about it. Remember, we're focusing on the primary benefits of version control and change management.
Time's up, Dana. The correct answer is C. Automating security patch deployment. While version control can assist in managing patches, automating their deployment is not a primary function of version control systems.
Spot on, Petey. Automating security patch deployment is more related to patch management systems rather than version control. It's an important security practice, but not a primary benefit of version control.
Exactly, D-Man. Now let's talk about the moral and legal implications of change management in security. This is a crucial aspect that often gets overlooked.
You're right, Pete. From a moral standpoint, organizations have a responsibility to protect the data and privacy of their users and customers. Proper change management is essential in fulfilling this obligation.
Absolutely, Dana. And legally, many industries are subject to regulations that require robust change management processes. For example, HIPAA in healthcare or PCI-DSS in financial services.
That's right, Petey. Failing to implement proper change management could result in data breaches, which can lead to hefty fines and legal consequences, not to mention the damage to reputation and loss of customer trust.
Excellent point, D-Man. It's also worth noting that in some jurisdictions, executives can be held personally liable for security breaches resulting from negligent practices, including poor change management.
Absolutely, Pete. That's why it's crucial to have a documented change management process that demonstrates due diligence in protecting sensitive information and maintaining system integrity.
You're spot on, Dana. Now let's discuss how to identify these moral and legal implications. One key method is to conduct regular risk assessments.
Right you are, Petey. Risk assessments help identify potential vulnerabilities and the impact of changes on security and compliance. It's like a health checkup for your IT systems.
Great analogy, D-Man. Another method is to stay informed about relevant laws and regulations. This might involve consulting with legal experts or joining industry associations that provide updates on compliance requirements.
Absolutely, Pete. It's also important to foster a culture of ethical behavior and security awareness throughout the organization. This helps ensure that everyone understands the importance of proper change management.
Couldn't agree more, Dana. Regular audits and penetration testing can also help identify potential issues before they become serious problems.
You're on a roll, Petey. And let's not forget about incident response planning. Having a solid plan in place can help mitigate the impact of any security incidents that do occur.
Excellent point, D-Man. Now let's pause for another question. Are you ready?
Ready as I'll ever be, Pete. Fire away.
All right, here's the question. Which of the following is not a typical method for identifying moral and legal implications in change management? A. Conducting regular risk assessments. B. Staying informed about relevant laws and regulations. C. Implementing continuous integration/continuous deployment, CI/CD, pipelines. Or D. Fostering a culture of ethical behavior and security awareness.
That's a tricky one, Pete. Let's give our listeners a moment to think about it. Remember, we're focusing on methods for identifying moral and legal implications in change management.
Time's up, Dana. The correct answer is C. Implementing continuous integration/continuous deployment, CI/CD, pipelines. While CI/CD is important for efficient software development and deployment, it's not typically used to identify moral and legal implications in change management.
You're absolutely right, Petey. CI/CD is more about automating the software delivery process. While it can incorporate security checks, it's not primarily used for identifying moral and legal implications.
Exactly, D-Man. Now let's wrap up with a case study to illustrate the importance of robust change management processes. Are you familiar with the Equifax data breach of 2017?
Oh boy, that was a doozy, Pete. One of the largest credit reporting agencies in the world, and they suffered a massive data breach that exposed sensitive information of 147 million people, all because of a failure in their change management process.
That's right, Dana. A critical vulnerability in the Apache Struts framework was disclosed and patched in March 2017. Equifax's security team was aware of the vulnerability and circulated an internal memo to apply the patch. But due to inadequate change management processes, several things went wrong.
You're not kidding, Petey. First, the team responsible for applying the patch failed to do so. Then there was no follow-up process to verify that the critical security update had been applied. And to top it all off, vulnerability scans failed to detect the unpatched systems.
Exactly, D-Man. As a result, attackers exploited this vulnerability and gained unauthorized access to Equifax's systems, exfiltrating massive amounts of sensitive data over several months before the breach was detected.
It's a perfect storm of what can go wrong when change management processes aren't robust enough, Pete. This case study really underscores the critical importance of proper change management in maintaining security.
Absolutely, Dana. It highlights the need for clear ownership, thorough impact analysis, rigorous testing, and proper documentation and version control. All things we've discussed today.
You're right, Petey, and let's not forget the moral and legal implications. Equifax faced massive fines, legal action, and a severe blow to their reputation. It's a stark reminder of the real-world consequences of poor change management.
Couldn't have said it better myself, D-Man. Now let's have one final question to wrap things up. Are you ready?
Ready as I'll ever be, Pete. Let's do this.
All right, here's the question. In the context of the Equifax data breach, which of the following was not a direct failure in their change management process? A. Failure to apply a critical security patch. B. Lack of follow-up to verify patch application. C. Inadequate vulnerability scanning. Or D. Delayed breach notification to affected individuals.
Ooh, that's a good one, Pete. Let's give our listeners a moment to think about it. Remember, we're focusing on direct failures in the change management process related to the Equifax breach.
Time's up, Dana. The correct answer is D. Delayed breach notification to affected individuals. While this was a significant issue in the Equifax case, it's not directly related to their change management process failures.
You're absolutely right, Petey. The delayed notification was more of a failure in incident response and communication rather than change management. The other options all directly relate to how Equifax managed or failed to manage the critical security update.
Exactly, D-Man. And with that, we've come to the end of our UberSchool production on change management processes and their impact on security. Any final thoughts?
Just this, Pete. Change management isn't just an operational necessity, it's a critical component of an organization's security strategy. From business processes to technical implications, from documentation to version control, every aspect of change management has significant security implications.
Couldn't agree more, Dana. Remember, in the rapidly evolving landscape of IT and cybersecurity, change is inevitable. But with proper change management processes in place, we can ensure that these changes enhance rather than compromise our security posture.
Well said, Petey. And to all our listeners, remember, in the world of IT security, the only constant is change. And how we manage that change can make all the difference.
Thanks for joining us on this UberSchool production. Until next time, stay secure and manage those changes wisely.